Astrological history of the war on cannabis. Alright, let's just get into it. The foundational energy of the war on cannabis is Plutonian. Okay, Pluto governs power, control, subversion, the underworld, and compulsive fear. Its transit through the sign of Cancer, 1913 to 1938, is the critical astrological signature for the origins of Prohibition. Pluto in Cancer. Cancer rules the nation, the home, security, and tradition. It is a sign deeply concerned with protection and purity. Pluto's transit here plunged the collective psyche into profound anxieties about the integrity of the nation and the moral fabric of the family. This manifested as intense xenophobia, nativism, and a compulsive drive to purge society of perceived corrupting influences. Historical correlation. The first state-level cannabis prohibitions, beginning with Massachusetts in 1911, were explicitly linked to anti-immigrant sentiment, particularly against Mexican migrants who were associated with the plant. The name marijuana was popularized to emphasize its foreignness. This was a Plutonic strategy to demonize a substance by associating it with a marginalized, feared other, thereby consolidating power and enforcing a rigid, pure national identity. Cancer. The powerful Hearst newspaper empire with its own vested economic interests amplified this fear, demonstrating Pluto's control over media and propaganda. The Neptunian fog, the reefer madness era, 1930s to 1960s. If Pluto provided the compulsive fear, Neptune provided the vehicle for its dissemination, illusion, confusion, and mass propaganda. The release of films like Reefer Madness and the passage of the 1937 Marijuana Tax Act, which effectively criminalized the plant, occurred under a key Neptune transit. Neptune in Virgo, 1928 to 1942. Neptune dissolves and confuses the principles of the sign it transits. Virgo rules health, purity, service, and factual analysis. Neptune in Virgo created a cultural environment where the lines between factual public health and the delusional hysteria were blurred. The archetype of the killer weed was born, a substance that supposedly caused insanity, violence, and moral decay. This was a perfect Neptunian smokescreen clouding the rational, analytical nature of Virgo with fantastical fears. The 1937 Marijuana Tax Act. This legislation was the culmination of this Neptunian campaign, masterminded by Harry Anslinger. It did not outlaw cannabis outright, but made its trade so bureaucratically burdensome and taxable that it became commercially unviable and legally perilous. This is a classically Neptunian and Plutonic tactic, using obfuscation and a veil of legality to enact a de facto prohibition, creating a shadow market that would soon be targeted by Pluto's enforcement arm. The Uranus-Pluto square and the countercultural front, 1960s to 1970s. The rigid control of the Plutonic-Neptunian establishment was inevitably met by a Uranian counterforce. Uranus is the planet of rebellion, awakening, and liberation. The pivotal astrological configuration of the 1960s was the square, a 90-degree angle of tension between Uranus and Virgo, and Pluto and Virgo mid-1960s, later shifting to a Uranus-Pluto opposition. Uranus versus the establishment. The youth counterculture with its mantra of turn on, tune in, drop out was a pure Uranian rebellion against the established order. Cannabis became a sacrament of this movement, a tool for expanding consciousness, challenging authority, and rejecting the materialistic conformist values of their parents' generation, the old Pluto and Leo Cancer paradigm. The Controlled Substance Act of 1970. The establishment's Plutonic response was swift and severe. Under President Nixon, cannabis was classified as a Schedule I drug, declaring it to have no medical value and a high potential for abuse. This was a definitive act of Pluto aiming to control, suppress, and criminalize the Uranian impulse for freedom. Nixon's domestic policy chief, John Ehrlichman, later admitted this was a political strategy to target anti-war protesters and the black community. The war was now fully militarized, moving from Neptunian deception to overt Plutonic power. The long Neptunian decline and the Uranian awakening, 1980s to 2000s. The 1980s Just Say No campaign and the escalation of the drug war under Reagan occurred with Neptune in Sagittarius, 1970 to 1984, amplifying moralistic and dogmatic Sagittarius, but ultimately simplistic and illusory Neptune solutions. However, the seeds of change were being planted. Uranus and Neptune in Aquarius, 1990s to 2000s, the concurrent transit of both Uranus, 1995 to 2003, and Neptune, 1998 to 2012, through Aquarius began to shift the paradigm. Aquarius rules science, technology, humanitarianism, and the collective. This period saw the rise of the internet, Uranus, allowing for the decentralized sharing of information, bypassing traditional media gatekeepers. the medical cannabis movement, Aquarius, Neptune, the compassionate Neptune use of cannabis for AIDS and cancer patients entered public awareness, supported by scientific Aquarius evidence. California's passage of Proposition 215 in 1996 was a landmark Uranian breakthrough. The Aquarian Reformation, Pluto and Capricorn and the dawn of legalization, 2008 to present. The current era of legalization is being driven by the most significant generational transit of our time, Pluto's movement through Capricorn 2008 to 2024, and its impending full entry into Aquarius. Pluto and Capricorn, the dismantling of structures. Pluto's transit through Capricorn has one function, to tear down and transform corrupt, crumbling, and oppressive structures, Capricorn. This includes governments, financial systems, and the very laws of the drug war. The undeniable failure of the war on cannabis, its racial inequities, and its massive financial costs have been exposed under this transit. State-level legalization movements represent a decentralized Aquarian rebellion against a failed federal Capricorn policy. The Uranus and Taurus Revolution, 2018 to 2026. Concurrently, Uranus and Taurus is revolutionizing Uranus, the most tangible aspects of life, the body, money, and values. Taurus, cannabis is being reframed from a dangerous drug to a wellness product, an agricultural commodity, and a legitimate source of tax revenue. This is a fundamental revaluation, Taurus, of the plant itself. Conclusion: the ascendance of Aquarius and the end of the war. The war on cannabis is a historical artifact of a past astrological age, a project born of Pluto and Cancer fear, propagated by Neptune and Virgo deception, and enforced by a rigid Capricornian authority. Its demise is being orchestrated by the dawning Aquarian age, characterized by Uranian innovation, scientific reason, and a humanitarian focus on restorative justice over punitive control. As Pluto completes its transit in Capricorn, the final legal and structural barriers are collapsing. When Pluto finally enters Aquarius in 2024, it will cement this transformation for generations, ensuring that cannabis is integrated into the fabric of society, not as a symbol of rebellion, but as a normalized component of medicine, commerce, and personal freedom. The celestial narrative reveals that the war was never truly about a plant. It was a cyclical, archetypal battle between control and liberation, fear and enlightenment, whose time has now conclusively passed.